Hi. Sometimes you're going to have a situation when you're trying to perform a sync where you get this kind of message that's showing on the screen right now, where it'll say that the remote repository and the local repository are somehow out of sync. And it will ask you, do you want to accept the current change or accept the incoming change? So we're going to talk briefly about this, and we're going to talk about, what change means what and what you can do about it, right? Now, this is going to be a very quick video. I don't want to take a long time talking about it. I'll go into one that's going to be a little bit more complicated or a little bit more detailed. So let's start right now. Okay, so we're going to have a screen here, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring up Visual Studio Code, and we're going to make a very small modification to our program. We're going to commit it locally, but we're not going to sync it up. And that's where the problem happens. When we commit, we save to what's called our local repository. When we sync, that saves it to the remote. So what we want to do is get the local repository and the remote repository out of sync so that Git can no longer determine what changes should, apply, because it doesn't know. You've made modifications not just to the same file, but to the same lines of code on that file. So we're going to start with a very simple example. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to log in from Storming Robots. So right now we're on a Storming Robots computer in class, and we're going to log in as test.me. That's my test account. And I'm going to log in, and I'm going to do what I normally do. And it's logged in, and I'm going to open up the repo folder and one of the subfolders in there under test.me. So I've done that, and I'm going to go into the source folder, and I'm going to make a change to main. As you can see, this is pretty basic, and we got a lot of pop-ups here. Let's just ignore that. So as you see, this is very basic. So I'm going to add a variable. Let's call it x, and we'll set to 42. And I'll throw a little comment in. Yay. Why not? And now I'm not even going to bother running this. I'm just going to do a save. Okay, and it's saved. And as you can see, the little one icon showed up. And I'm going to do a commit, and I'm going to commit this locally. So I commit, you see the sync change button is there, but I'm going to forget to even sync it, okay? So I'm just going to ignore it altogether and not do any sync. I'm going to close down, and I'm going to let's just say log off at this point, okay? All right. All right. Now what we're looking at here, this Visual Studio Code with a extremely red background, is my computer at home, okay? So I'm not really at home, but I'm going to pretend I'm at home. And I've already tried to sync up with a remote repository. Now, if you recall, I didn't sync at work. So this repository here that I have, it's out of date, okay? So it's lacking that variable. Remember, I typed in the x equals 42. I made an integer. Well, it's not here. So I say to myself, well, I need to add this in. I must have forgotten to do something. So I'll go ahead and add it in again, all right? And that's pretty easy for us to do. But it's going to have a consequence when we try to sync up. So let's give that a shot. And let me just get this mouse moving over here. There we go. So I'm going to type in int. And I'm going to make it a different value. I think 99 instead of 43. And I type in, am I sure this is right? Yeah, because I know it's not. So I'm going to save that. So I'm going to make that change, and I'm going to come in, and I'm going to commit. And added x variable, commit. And here I do sync the change, let's say. So that changes my remote repository, okay? All right, so we've done that. Now what we need to do is go back to our Storming Robots computer, and this is where the errors are all going to happen. Okay, so let's go back there. Okay, now we're back on the computer at Storming Robots. I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code, or VS Code, and I'm going to take a look at this. I think we're going to get some windows pop up like the platform, stuff. That's okay. We'll just close those out. We'll come into main.cpp. You can see my x equals 42 is here because this is the same computer from last week. So I'm going to add in another variable. Let's say int y equals 10, just to make a slight change. So I can come in here, and you can see I need to do a commit. So this will, so I'm going to type in here the commit message I want to give it. So I added the y variable. Do I want to save? Yes, I do. Now you'll see it says sync changes, 1 up and 2 down. So I log in, test.me, and I give it the password. And as you can see, we have this problem here. Okay, so let's take a look at this. All right, now, if you can take a look at this, you can see I have 2 options, okay? And you can see both changes. If you recall, the changes I made at the local Storming Robots computer, I had added in x equals 42 and y equals 10. On my home computer, I had said x is equal to 99. So Git is confused. It's like, well, which one did you want? And it has no clue. It doesn't know which one. And we can kind of zoom in on this a little bit. Or maybe we can't. Well, if you take a look, you should be able to read this and see that the one that is local is called the current change. The one that is remote is called the incoming change, okay? So let's take a look and see how we can handle these problems, because this is very common for kids to get, okay? Okay, so as I said earlier, I can choose the current change or I could choose the incoming change. Now, this is a really easy example. Some of them are a lot more complicated, and I'll make a video on one that's a little bit more complicated later. In a more complicated situation, we would probably click the resolve in Merge Editor, and then that would go through and allow us to look at individual changes that had happened throughout, let's say, a very large file. And that's quite common to do. It's more common, and you can see here's an example of what it looks like, right? But it isn't that hard to deal with. Normally, it's when multiple people have edited the same file. Here we go. And this is what they'd have to do. They'd have to go through each individual change and make the decision, what do we keep and what do we throw away? In this particular case, though, it's pretty simple. So we don't really need to do that. So I'm not going to save that. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to make a decision which one to save. Now, in this particular case, since it's either I keep the old X of 42 and the Y of 10, or I keep the X of 99. I do have a third option, if you look over, or, a third option, and that is accept both changes. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to accept just the local change. And then the X equals 42, the Y equals 10 is there. And then what I want to do is I'm going to commit that. Now the button is not highlighted, but I can commit using the checkbox. And then this asks me, do I want to save all and commit? I say yes. Now I have 3 changes that I need to sync. So I click that, I log in. And everything uploads and we're in good shape.